Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the invocation delivered by Dr. Francis Tony Murphy Draper, CEO and publisher of Afro-American Newspaper.
Shall we pray? Eternal God, sovereign and sustainer, we bow our heads and lift our hearts today in awe and gratitude. In this hallowed place where history is remembered and sacrifice honored, we pause to commemorate a long overdue recognition, the awarding of the Congressional Gold Medal to the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion. We give thanks for the 855 courageous Black women, soldiers, sisters, daughters, mothers, and wives who served with the 688. In 1945, God, they crossed oceans and broke barriers. Amid the devastation of war, under unimaginable conditions, cold, dark, rat-infested warehouses with bombs overhead and morale crumbling, they brought order, hope, and human connection. They sorted millions of pieces of mail, but even more profoundly, they reconnected hearts across oceans, reminding weary soldiers that they were not forgotten. From every corner of our nation they came, including proud daughters of my home state of Maryland, such as my own aunt, Vashti Turley Murphy Matthews, who alongside her sisters in arms showed the world what faith, courage, and determination could achieve when given the chance to serve. Lord, we thank you for President Joe Biden, whose signature affirmed this honor, and for the steadfast leadership of Representative Gwen Moore, Senator Jerry Moran, and Senator Jackie Rosen, whose bipartisan commitment made this historic day possible. May their example inspire continued efforts to honor truth, justice, and sacrifice. Today, we lift up the families, those gathered here and those carrying this legacy across generations. May this moment bring healing, affirmation, and pride. May it remind us that no act of valor is ever forgotten and no story of sacrifice should ever go untold. Bless the Congress and grant its members wisdom, humility, and moral clarity as they serve the people of this nation. And bless these United States of America, made stronger, richer, and more equitable because of women like those of the 688. And it's in your name that we pray, and the people of God said, Amen. Amen.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jake LaTurner, former United States Representative from the 2nd District of Kansas.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished guests, friends, I am so humbled to be here today for this celebration. And that's what this is a long overdue celebration for some very brave women in our history. As has been said here today, the women of the 688 deserve to be honored with the highest civilian award Congress can give. In a time of war, and in a world that questioned both their worth and their capability, this all-Black, all-female battalion answered their nation's call with courage, dignity, and excellence. They understood that they were integral to our nation's success, that the millions of pieces of mail they sorted had an enormous impact on the morale of our soldiers, and they have not received the recognition that they deserve. This is not just about a medal, though. This is about cementing their rightful place in history, and I'm pleased to be a very small part of that. I want to thank Senator Moran, Senator Rosen, Representative Moore for their hard work in making sure that this day is possible. May the legacy of the 688 continue to inspire us every single day and encourage us to build a nation ever worthy of their sacrifice. Thank you, and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Gwen Moore, United States Representative from the 4th District of Wisconsin.
Mr. Speaker, the Early family, armed forces, I want to especially speak of Colonel Edna Cummings that you'll be hearing from shortly, honored guests, colleagues, all who are gathered here. It is such a privilege to be standing here in Emancipation Hall, a sacred place, and it is fitting for a location for this ceremony. The Capitol, the Emancipation Hall, is named for the enslaved laborers that played a crucial and oft-overlooked role in the construction of this Capitol. And they were very excluded from the very freedom that it embodies. The lengthy process of constructing the U.S. Capitol relied upon free and enslaved laborers at every step. For example, slaves augmented a number of projects, perhaps most notably the Statue of Freedom that is atop the U.S. Capitol dome and is owed in part to the labor and skill of enslaved artisan Philip Reed. But of course, their contributions went unhidden and unrecognized. But now we have a plaque here, and this very hall really recognizes the labor of those folks. And today, indeed, the 6888 Battalion were these unsung heroes who served their country. And they did it because they were patriotic, not because they thought that they would ever get any recognition. And now, 80 years later, after they were deployed to Europe, this ceremony is a fitting end to a long journey to make sure that we do not forget their service. And none of them did it for glory. They did it for the love of country. And you know, the story reminds us so much that while there's much that divides our country today, there's even more that joins us together. And like a commitment to service, a commitment to doing something bigger than yourself, to live voluntarily, to go into service in a war zone, even in the face of segregation at home. We want to thank the women of the 6888 from all over the nation, the 855 women who served for their service. They're women like my constituent, who is still alive, a young 101 years old, Private Anna Mae Robertson of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I first got to know Anna Mae Robertson because she's the mother of a friend of mine that I went to college with, and she's also a constituent. And my office was contacted to look for some of the service medals that they thought she most certainly deserved. And as I got these service medals, I realized what a tremendous, remarkable, and unknown story the 6888 was. And that history lived right there in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And as I worked to prepare these remarks, I had to think further about how this evolved. Her daughter, Cherie Robertson, very dear friend of mine, wrote me a letter, and I'm quoting from Cherie's letter. Quote, "By sponsoring the bill for the Congressional Gold Medal, you will be ensuring that the contributions and sacrifices made by the women who served in the 6888 Central Posting Battalion will not go unnoticed and will be appreciated by future generations." Unquote. And you've heard about the obstacles that these various cold, freezing weather rats, but they put duty first. And in the days before cell phones, emails, text, Instagram, you could only imagine how important getting a letter from home was, and as it sustained our young men in the theater of war. I want to quote from an obituary that appeared in the Niagara Gazette, May 21st, 2021, of the 688. Their work was more than sorting mail. It was ministering to the souls of soldiers, making sure they received that little piece of home that reminded them that they were not forgotten. Ergo, the motto, no mail, low morale. And as I hurry to a close, I want to thank Representative Jake LaTurner. I remember when I tracked you down in the Republican cloakroom to be my co-sponsor. I remember dogging all of the generals in the House, cussing, you better damn well help me get some signatures. Senator Jerry Moran, and of course my good friend, Senator Jackie Rosen, for spearheading this legislation in the Senate. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention a person who helped me write these remarks and didn't put his name in here, my legislative director, Chris Golson, who was dogged about getting the signatures. It took us 7 years to get this done. And of course, you're going to hear from amazing people like retired Army Colonel Edna Cummings and Carlton Philpotton, many others that I can't name, who picked up the phone to make calls and send emails to get us to this point. As one reporter noted in one of the many stories about these remarkable women, quote, "The 688 was an experiment, a pass-fail test to determine the value Black women brought to the military." And let me say, today, all of us bear witness to their impeccable, remarkable performance, their commitment to freedom, and that's why we're able to gather here today in Emancipation Hall, to celebrate their legacy. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jackie Rosen, United States Senator from Nevada.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Mr. Speaker, the leaders, senators, my dear friend Gwen Moore, you have motivated us to do all of this. My friends in Congress, members of the military, families and friends, and for those watching, the few survivors who are watching us today, thank you, thank you, thank you, because we are thrilled to be here, all of us together, to celebrate the incredible women of the 688. And these brave women, over 800 strong, made up the only all-Black, all-woman unit deployed overseas during World War II, and that should be applauded. Again, to Congresswoman Moore, and I'm proud to work with Senator Moran, our partners all across both houses, to make sure that the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion got the recognition that they truly and rightfully deserve with the Congressional Gold Medal, Congress's highest civilian honor. I got involved with these efforts, these heroes, especially because of the women who called my state of Nevada home. Women like Corporal Mabel Nevels, women like Corporal Alberta Bradley, and women like Corporal Lena King, who later in her life came to call Nevada home. That's right. And it was Corporal King's story that motivated me to make sure that these heroic women got the recognition that they deserved. And even though she is no longer with us, she is with us in spirit. Her heroism remains. her spirit and her legacy intact. All of these trailblazing women, they not only answered the call to serve their country, but they did so in the face of incredible challenges of the time, like racism and sexism. And their mission sounds like a simple one, just to deliver the mail, right? But to distribute mail and clear a massive backlog of 17 million letters and packages, it was a tremendous feat, and it was critical. It was critical. This mail was the only connection that our troops had to home, that they had to family. It was their light in the darkness and the loneliness of war. So for the heroes that were risking their lives on the front line, this mail, the mail that they so carefully worked 24 hours a day to figure out where it went and who it went to, they knew it would bring them joy, it would bring them hope, and it would bring them their humanity. And despite the many challenges, the women of the 688 cleared that backlog in half the time expected. Their speed, their precision, their dedication remained true to their motto as expressed by Corporal King: no mail, low morale. For decades, their service went largely unrecognized, hidden in the margins of history, and that changes today. Today, they are no longer hidden. We stand up for the 688. And let this medal, at this time, in this place, Emancipation Hall, and this moment, stand as a permanent reminder that courage knows no color, that strength knows no gender, and patriotism knows no bounds. So on behalf of a grateful nation, to the families, the descendants, the friends, and the loved ones, the women of 688, we thank you for your service, and we are so proud to honor you here today. You have our eternal gratitude. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jerry Moran, United States Senator from Kansas.
Ladies and gentlemen, Americans, congressional leaders, Representative LaTurner and Representative Gwen Moore, and my colleague from the Senate, Senator Jackie Rosen. It is a privilege of a lifetime to stand in front of you today to pay tribute and respect to the women of the 688. The World War II heroes we recognize today were freedom fighters who set aside the safety and comfort of their home to deploy to Europe to support and fight tyranny, to support freedom, which they didn't always experience in their own country. These women came from all over our nation. They came from all walks of life. I suppose in many ways we'd say they were just average Americans. But these average Americans were something more than just average. At every time, in every generation, we need role models. We need role models today. We can only strive and hope that we can earn in our own lifetime the respect that these women earned and deserve in their lifetimes. The women of the Army Corps Central Postal Directory Battalion, as we now are certain we know, the women of the 688, are soldiers who went above and beyond their duty. They broke barriers that should never have existed and defied odds that were stacked against them. Their commitment and determined efforts to eliminate a backlog of mail touched the lives of millions of American soldiers and their families at home. For American soldiers on the front line, messages from home, they provided comfort and a reminder for the people back home that they were fighting for. For the families back home, the letters gave them comfort and a level of certainty that their loved ones were alive and maybe well. Written words of encouragement, love, and hope offered glimpses of what life could be like when they returned home. What all of us want in our life, at most times in our life, is hope. And letters from home provided hope. Hope to return to life of love and family. Tucked away in pockets of soldiers, the letters from home gave them the strength to push forward to achieve their mission. The 6888 is especially important to me as the son of a World War II veteran who left his new bride in Emporia, Kansas, to fight in Europe. I don't know if any of the letters between my mom and dad passed through the hands of the 6888, but I do know that the work they did made it possible for millions of young men like my dad to keep up the fight. When these women returned home, there was no parade to greet them. No one lined the streets to thank them for their service. That ain't right, and we're trying to correct it today. Many return to their daily lives only with the stories of their service in World War II. In 2018, I had the honor to meet 5 of these exceptional women, including Dolores Ruddock, and that at the dedication of the ceremony of the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion Monument at the Buffalo Soldier Memorial Park in Leavenworth, Kansas. A day I will never forget, and a day that caused me to think, what more could we do to show our gratitude? Those ladies that I met, all in their 90s, these 5 women that came to Fort Leavenworth, they braved our Kansas winter to see a memorial built in their honor. 3 years later, I attended the funeral of Dolores, and I'm grateful she lived to see the memorial in Kansas built to her honor, and I regret she didn't live to see today's ceremony. I'm grateful I could introduce the Congressional Gold Medal Act. I introduced it in the Senate to bestow this honor upon the 6888, and I'm saddened that we weren't able to express our gratitude more quickly to the women while they were still living. You know, I indicated that Dolores was able to see a monument built in her honor. Shortly before the World War II memorial was to be dedicated, I put on my running shoes and walked to the World War II memorial. And when I got there, I arrived and looked for the Kansas pillar. And I stepped away and used my flip phone to call my dad at home in Plainville, Kansas. And I was lucky because the voicemail, the answering machine picked up. I probably wouldn't have said what I said on the voicemail on the answering machine if he'd answered the phone himself. But I said, Dad, I'm at the World War II memorial. Dad, this memorial was built in your honor. Dad, I want you to know that I respect you. I thank you for your service. And Dad, I love you. I walked back to my office and my phone rang. It was my dad. And he said, Gerald? And I said, Dad? He said, you left me a message, but I couldn't understand it. Would you repeat it? I'm no longer able to repeat that message to my own dad. But I've tried in my time as a member of the House of Representatives and as a United States Senator to honor, respect, and meet our obligations to those who served our nation. To Fannie McClendon and Anna Mae Robertson, who represent really 850 women who served along their side on behalf of a grateful nation. This nation needs to learn to be grateful. but to be on behalf of a grateful nation and on behalf of my mom and dad. I thank you for your service. I respect you, and I love you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Band, Pershing Zone, Brass Quintet performing Song of the Women's Army Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic Leader of the United States House of Representatives.
Good afternoon. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we're here to rejoice and be glad in it. To Colonel Edna W. Cummings, Mr. Stanley Early III, Mrs. Judith Early, Dr. Murphy, the families of our heroes, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Leader Schumer, members of Congress, certainly to Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Congressman Jake LaTurner, Senator Rosen, Senator Moran, and all those assembled. It's a high honor and a distinct privilege to join you all today as we recognize the extraordinary women and the extraordinary accomplishments of the 688. In 1945, the 855 members of the 688, the largest group of black women to serve overseas during World War II, deployed to Europe during one of the most difficult periods in American history. Led by Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early, the daughter of a preacher, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I figured that would generate some type of reaction. And the highest-ranking black woman officer at the time. These fiercely passionate, patriotic, and persistent members of the Women's Army Corps deployed knowing that they would confront the dual challenges of racism and sexism at the hands of their own military and beyond. Lieutenant Colonel Early once stated, "When I talk to students, they say, 'How did it feel to know you were making history?' And then she responded, 'But you don't know you're making history when it's happened.' I just wanted to do my job." And what a job well done by the 688. They were given 6 months to do what others could not. In a war zone, with bombs dropping above and horrific warehouse conditions. But with their life-saving and life-sustaining battle cry of no mail, low morale, that's M-A-I-L, not M-A-L-E. Don't want anybody to get it twisted. No mail, low morale. They defied the odds and cleared millions of pieces of mail and years of backlog in only 3 months, record time. Record time. We gather today to salute these mighty veterans. We salute the ingenuity with which they sprang into battle. We salute the barriers that they broke in a system designed to push them aside. We salute their trailblazing spirit and the road that they paved for others. We especially honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, including Private First Class Mary Bankston from New York. Mary was killed in a vehicle accident along with 2 other members of the unit when the War Department wouldn't provide funds for their burial. The heroes of the 688 took up a collection to pay for their caskets and themselves laid their sisters to rest. That's the spirit, the soulfulness, the sisterhood of the 688. We reject any efforts now to erase this history, and that is why this bipartisan ceremony is so particularly important. The women of the 688 overcame the odds, disproved the doubters, and courageously contributed to the Allied victory in World War II. Their efforts helped freedom prevail over fascism, and that is why they are so worthy to be praised. We are forever indebted to them for their honorable service, and as a result of this gold medal ceremony, we forever will ensure that they will never, ever be hidden figures again. God bless you. God bless the 688. May God continue to bless the United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Charles E. Schumer, Democratic Leader of the United States Senate.
To Mr. Stanley Early, Colonel Edna Cummings, my colleagues in the Senate and the House, to Senators Moran and Rosen, Congress members Moore and LaTurner, but most of all, the relatives, friends, supporters of the great and now properly remembered 688. From 1943 to 1945, 2,000 acres of once quiet New York farmland operated as the busiest military embarkation camp in the world. Nearly 1.3 million soldiers passed through Camp Shanks before crossing the Atlantic to join the war in Europe, including the women of the 688 Central Postal Directory, the only black all-female unit to serve abroad in all of World War II. Today, we honor the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest civilian honor bestowed by Congress to the trailblazing women of the 688. And by now, we all know the stories of their heroics, their great heroics. How they sorted millions of pieces of mail in record time, making sure soldiers received their letters and packages from back home. But also how they overcame doubt and discrimination to get the job done, how they lifted the morale of an entire army fighting for freedom. But before they could do any of this, they had to fight for even the opportunity to serve. At the time, black women had just recently been granted the ability to join the Women's Army Corps. Those who did were forced to train in harsh conditions, to live in segregated barracks, and were routinely assigned menial tasks like janitorial duties. Still, they persisted. They showed up every single day with dignity, discipline, and a dogged determination to serve. And when the opportunity finally came for the women of the 688, they answered the call and changed the course of history. They took on a mission that many others deemed impossible. They carried the weight of an entire army on their shoulders, and they illustrated that American heroes come from all walks of life, regardless of gender, regardless of race. So today, with this long overdue award, the 688 will take their rightful place in the pantheon of America's greatest wartime heroes. Their legacy, once overlooked, will now endure for generations to come. So God bless the 888, the 688. God bless our women and men in uniform, and God bless the United States of America. This is a great day for our country.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Jack Thune, Majority Leader of the United States Senate.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Leader Schumer, Senators Moran and Rosen, Congressman LaTurner, Congresswoman Moore. No mail, low morale. As has already been said, it was the motto of the 688. For my dad and the millions of other Americans who served overseas during World War II, there were no emails, no FaceTimes, no Zooms, no phone calls. My Uncle Gib was at Pearl Harbor when it was hit on December 7th in 1941, and my grandparents didn't know for days whether he was alive or dead. Letters were the only connection to home. In the absence of those letters, that was a real blow to soldiers already facing constant strain and danger. In early 1945, the mail situation was a big problem. Warehouses in Birmingham, England were filled with a backlog of 17 million pieces of mail. It was estimated that clearing that backlog would take 6 months. Enter the 688. The women of the 688 Central Postal Directory Battalion, the only all-black and women of color Women's Army Corps unit to serve overseas during World War II, arrived in Birmingham in February, and boy, did they get to work. And despite often dismal working conditions and practical challenges, there were, for example, 7,500 Americans named Robert Smith. Within 3 months, they had cleared the backlog. 3 months. Half the time estimated for the task. A story of professionalism and excellence and determination worthy of being remembered all on its own. But there's more to it than that. Because these women accomplished their task in the face of challenges no battalion of white men, or even white women for that matter, would have had to face. In addition to the ordinary trials of their service, they faced racism, segregation, hostility, and prejudice. But they did their jobs anyway. And for these trailblazing women and their exceptional commander, Major Charity Adams, deserve to be doubly remembered. It is an honor to be here today to witness the 6,888 receive this recognition. And I hope that this medal and this presentation today will bring additional attention to their historic story. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
All right, so the moment we've all been waiting for. As we've heard today, the story of the 6,888 has been buried in American history for quite some time. But we are grateful for the many descendants, historians, and advocates with us today who helped bring the legacy of this storied unit to light. Just last week, I was back home in Louisiana, and while I was there, I had the honor of meeting the oldest living World War II veteran. He lives in my district there. He just turned 106 years old. Yeah. He's sharp as a tack, and I asked him for his vitamin regimen, but that's another story. We gave him a Congressional Commendation Award, and it was the very least that I could do. I felt inadequate, but just giving him the certificate. But what we do today is so appropriate. I was reminded then, as I am now, that with each passing day, we are slowly losing our ties to this great generation of men and women. It is our responsibility and solemn duty as citizens to preserve this heritage, to ensure the heroism and bravery of our greatest generation are never forgotten. And it is a biblical admonition that all of us must give honor where honor is due. That's what we do today. So for their distinguished service, I am proud our nation is finally giving the women of the 6,888 the recognition they've long deserved. Today is our way of saying in no uncertain terms that their story will never be forgotten. And so, on behalf of a grateful nation, it is my honor to present the Congressional Gold Medal to this 6,888. At this time, I will ask Leader Thune, Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries, Senator Moran, Senator Rosen, Representative Moore, Representative LaTurner, Colonel Edna Cummings, and Mr. Stanley Early III, and Ms. Judith Early to please join me here in the front of the stage for the presentation of the medals.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stanley III, son of Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams Early.